I'm Kristin Dalton. I'm the eldest of Kyle and Karen Hess, the eldest of 5 children. I'm mother to Brendalyn and pug dog Aries, married to Brian Dalton. Because I think whenever there's a tragedy, people remember it. And also I think the way that the family, didn't fall apart and that mom was able to keep things going. And a lot of it's due to that he did impact a lot of lives while he was there. So people did have something to remember. So, I mean, it's easy to remember somebody if they actually had an impact in your life, like you'll remember your mother. Because he, had a lot of church responsibility, did have that impact with a lot of people on a personal level as well. Yeah. I mean, I remember calling into bed on Saturday mornings, and he had his little tape deck sitting right next to the bed. And so it was like when we knew mom and dad were up or awake, the kids could just kind of crawl into bed with them and they'd play Cats in the Cradle. That was, I don't remember, there was a couple of songs, but Cats in the Cradle was one I remembered all the time. And then I just remember him laying in bed and his hairy chest. And if you put your head on there, it tickled your cheek. Something silly, but that's kind of how a Saturday morning was. Sunday, he was usually gone, so we didn't see him. And Monday, Monday through Friday, he left, really, really early in the morning. So it was kind of a neat thing to be able to crawl in bed with him and be there Saturday morning. And then we'd all go watch Bugs Bunny, because that was one of his, Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner. He loved those cartoons. Um, the reason, my dad loved the outdoors. His love of the outdoors inspired me to continue doing that with my daughter, even though my husband's not into camping. I do that as my way to connect with him, basically. It's kind of that part of him that I bring into my life on a yearly basis, at least, where we go 3 to 4 times a year. He loved to go fishing, which I don't do, but he loved to do the fishing. He would take us out. The one thing I always remember is as our RVs got bigger and bigger, we started with the little bus, the little VW bus, and then it would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And he was very traditional. He would have had a heart attack if anybody brought a radio, a TV, video game, anything technological. So even though my mom wanted to be in the RV with the babies, he had to be out in the tent with the other kids. So that was his thing. He would not let her cook in the RV. He had to cook on his little camp stove over the fire. So he was very traditional. He gave her little comfort, but everything else had to be his way on that. Um, I count more like my dad. I don't have an RV. I we backpack. I don't think my mom's ever gone backpacking, so I don't mind getting gritty and getting down there and doing that. So, but that was kind of one of the things he gave me a love for, was being outdoors. He had this way that with anybody, whether you were family or anybody else, when you had his attention, you had his attention. He was very connected with just you. And he was the only dad on the block that when he came home from work, he always, and I don't know if I think I have this right. He would take a nap. He would go upstairs for like 20 minutes and take a nap. And then after that, he'd be out in the cul-de-sac playing with the kids or out wrestling on the floor with Kirk. He would be out there connecting with his kids and playing despite how tired he was. So I know he needed a little downtime, but he did that. And so that really made us feel special, because you never saw any other dads out there playing with the kids. And then he would always do things like, bring flowers for no reason to my mom. They had their date nights every Friday night or once a month or something like that. I can't remember timetables, but I know we had babysitters quite frequently so that they could have their time. He would make people, like kids that had teens that he was dealing with when they had issues. He'd be there for them. So I know in a lot of ways people felt he was very personable, he was easygoing, he was approachable. So he was one that got called out a lot to help with people, as well. Wasn't a mutual yet. And so I was just on the verge. So one of the things I did have a problem with when he died was I did have a lot of resentment built in that he was like, he had always there was kind of this thing where mom dealt with the little kids, and then he was such the fun guy and did all these wonderful things with the teens that all of us were just so excited to get into the teen world where, hey, we could connect with dad, and look, he's the most popular guy there. And so that was a little hard because we'd always expected that dad would be there for that part of our lives. So, but I think the teens, they felt a lot. I mean, they sent a lot of letters to my mom about that kind of stuff. I don't remember them approaching, me and going, oh, I think that kind of would have been cruel, actually. Going, hey, guess what I did with your dad? This was fun. But we did, one thing that I remember Kirk and I waiting up one night, New Year's Eve. It was the New Year's Eve just before he died. And we were both young, and because we were a little bit older, they were having a big New Year's Eve teen bash at our house. And so my mom had said if we could stay awake, we could come down at midnight or whatever, and we ended up falling asleep. But we were just waiting up there, waiting for our turn to be able to go down to join the fun, because it did sound like they were doing games and contests, but because we weren't quite old enough, we weren't allowed to go down yet. So it was kind of funny. It was kind of sad, actually, because it would have been nice to have gone down and participate in that. That's why the RVs kept getting bigger. Yeah. But yeah, no, part of one of the things mom did, as well as, like I said, I'm doing in my life, is she knew a dad's love of the outdoors. And so as part of being able to keep that and inspire that with her kids, she went outside her comfort zone to give that to her kids. Now, one could argue dad would be turning over in his grave at the Fantastic Sam 5-star RV resort she started taking us to that had the swimming pools, the miniature golf, and the ice cream soda shop. But at least she did what she felt comfortable doing. I thought that was odd. I mean, it was good, but as I got older, then I thought it was a little odd. I thought it was fun, though. We went to EFY, Kirk and I, with my mom, and when we all met up afterwards, she went to Especially for Singles, and we went to Especially for Youth, and it was so hilarious to me, but it was good and felt really refreshing when she was talking about she went to a dance, and she was talking like a teenager about these creepy guys and this and that, so Kirk and I were laughing at that because it was just kind of weird to me that, oh, okay, she actually had fun, or she's feeling the same thing I'm feeling as a 16, 17-year-old getting out there with guys on the dance floor. So it was odd in that way. I didn't feel it was a problem. I feel she did the right thing, because I feel like Dr. Lord does as well, that, you need to, if the husband's gone or whatever, it's just too complicated to marry and bring another family in to the whole dynamic, because it's just too much distractions. There's not as much chance that the marriage will work at that point, and so you're bringing chaos more into your life. And her whole thing was trying to keep the family together, keep the continuity. And in my mind, and I think the way she presented to the world and to the church, I don't think she ever had suitors, because I feel she presented herself as married. I don't think anyone in the church would think of her as not married. That's just, Kyle was too much of a presence still in her life, in her day-to-day life, that she wasn't open to having that, and it was good for us kids because you kind of felt like he was still there. You felt like it was kind of creepy in that you kind of felt like he was there so much that, oh crap, I better not make out too long because dad's watching from up there. It was almost like this ghost. So it was kind of strange on that end. But good in some ways because it did provide the continuity for the family, and that there was still a hole and it wasn't broken. And I mean, though I did see, that there were, definitely a difference between the two of us that were raised with the dad and the three of us that weren't, because it's just hard, without having the dad to be both. So I mean, you could argue it would be nice for them to have that male figure, but luckily we had a lot of friends of the family that stepped up, especially with Kirk and with Kent, and to kind of fulfill that role. I mean, Brent Harder was probably the closest male adult that kind of, provided something for me, I guess. I would, do stuff with he and his wife a lot with the young women's and with our backpacking trips and stuff like that. But no, to me, I mean, I wasn't looking for someone to step up and fulfill a father role, so it wasn't needed per se. And anyway, I don't know, I mean, it was just sad that he wasn't there, but it wasn't like I felt like I needed that influence in my life, because he was still at that point, at being 12, he was still very present in my life. A mix. Yeah. I'm a mix of my looks. I've got the shortness of my dad. I've got the weird curly hair that's coming out now as I'm getting older. That's more like my dad. Um, the blue eyes of my mom. The white skin is my mom. The personality is a little more my mom, but trying to get more parts of my dad in there. But a lot more of the passions of my dad than the passions of my mom. So like interests and stuff like that are more in that direction. So I'm just kind of mixed in that way. I like the organizing and doing all that stuff like my mom too. So um, it was just kind of weird because my dad passed away at Camp Fox, and it was kind of strange to me that they kept having the youth conferences at Camp Fox even after he died there. But it was kind of a unique thing too, because it almost felt like when you went there, it was just really like you were walking on some, it was just weird to know he died there. So, I mean, it was fun. And you were very distracted, but there was always a time where you just had to go walk along the beach. But, I mean, I didn't have any spiritual experiences or anything. It was just more that to me, it was more, that meant more to me going there than, going to a graveyard. Definitely, you know, so.
Just like this is it. It was right there.
Yeah.
Probably with the same people that it happened to.
Oh yeah, I mean, all the people are there. I'm sure even some of the teens were still there.
Did they?
Because I gotta
did they
go.
ever pull you aside, or
No.
it was just
No.
too
I just think it was weird. Yeah. They knew. It's like, it was just kind of weird. I mean, they didn't really talk to me. I think mom got more of the spiritual stuff, like what was going on, and she'd share with our family when she'd hear of stuff or how people were impacted. So occasionally the leaders would say something, but usually the kids, no, kids wouldn't say too much. But they knew, everyone in the area knew what had happened there. So I don't think I remember too much. I remember the day that my dad died was just like any other day for an 11-year-old, or at least me. I was over at my friend's house across the street from where we lived playing Barbies. Just playing Barbies. And then I don't know who ran over. Somebody ran over. I don't know if it was Kirk. I'm not sure. It must have been Kirk.
President Berger? Bishop Berger?
No, somebody ran over to get me, saying that something's wrong. President Berger's at the house with mom, and she's crying. So it was just really weird. I think it was probably Kirk because Kent was too little, so I'm thinking it had to be Kirk or something. And so it was just really, really weird and numb because when he told us, we heard, and Mom couldn't stand up, couldn't do anything. So we heard, but it was more concern for her, I think, to make sure, because as a little kid, you see your world collapsing, but then you want to know the people that are in charge of making you live and feeding you and everything else are going to be okay. So I think a lot of the older kids, at least, we were very protective of trying to shelter Mom and get her through it. And I mean, I remember that day, I don't remember too much. I remember just hugging and holding and crying and stuff like that. But over the coming months, it was weird because I remember, I don't know if it was Kent or Karina, probably Karina, the babies, the young kids, they didn't know what was going on. And they'd wake up or they'd be crying for Dad or whatever. And I mean, Kirk and I would just go ballistic on him. And, because whenever they'd start crying, then that would trigger Mom to cry. And so we tried to grab it and subdue and, get it under control before, because it's just that self-protection of, you want to keep things going in the right direction so you have a secure home and a house and everything like that. And, the good thing is she had Cammie. And with Cammie, she was the one thing that said, you have to move on. You can't not take care of the baby. There's no way you can go in depression. You've got all these kids. So in the end, her kids ended up saving her, because how do you recover from that? Well, just by doing what you have to do every single day, take care of the kids. But I just remember, I just thought was pretty messed up that, the little kids, they didn't understand. I just remember always running over to him, grabbing him, trying to distract him, do something else just to kind of keep it quiet so Mom wouldn't be upset. So it was more about doing that. And that was a good thing and a bad thing, because bad thing being that then you suffered more quietly because you didn't want to bring stuff up, to upset her. So Kirk and I tried to be strong. But that's just what we did.